Thank you for joining our Cart to Customs webinar on de minimis and HS codes. I am Barbara Rausch. I am a global account manager for ePost Global. I have 23 years in this industry, 18 of them with ePost Global. And joining us today is our expert at all things customs, Allison Layfield. She is ePost Global's VP of Product Development based out of Ontario, Canada. She's spent over 30 years navigating the shipping industry and has been a key part of ePost Global for 17 years. She is our resident expert on all the industry updates, shipping to Canada, all things customs compliance, and has been featured by NBC, The Washington Post, the Associated Press, and Bloomberg. We're excited to have Allison here joining us to answer all of the questions that we've all been receiving in our industry regarding the de minimis exemption and HS codes. So thank you, Allison, for joining today. I would like to start with how this is going to impact our customers. Before we get into that, can you just explain what is de minimis and what is a tariff for those who may not be aware?
Sure. Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, so basically de minimis means that goods can enter a country if they are under a threshold of de minimis, they can enter free of any import charges. So de minimis in our world, in the logistics and shipping world, means that into the United States, parcels that are valued or were valued at $800 or less were able to enter free of any import fees. Now that the de minimis has been removed, they are now subject to the tariffs, and the tariffs that these are the government just imposed back in August 29th of this year. And those percentages will vary based on the country of origin of the product, but they're pretty significant in some cases.
Now, what will the removal of the $800 de minimis mean for online shoppers? And are people going to be surprised by these tariffs?
Yeah, so I mean, as a consumer, what they're going to feel is that the impact is going to be cost. There's going to be a significant price increase because of the tariffs that have to be paid on these goods. Now, if you have a retailer that is using, say, a courier type service, the courier fee, in a lot of cases, you have an option to do either delivery duty unpaid or delivery duty paid. If it goes out as delivery duty unpaid, which means at checkout, the consumer didn't have to pay anything, then that consumer is going to get a fee charged to them, which will be equal to the tariff. Plus, usually there's a broker fee that's added to that, which can be, upwards of $15 a package, plus your duty percentage, which can be anywhere from 10 to 50%, depending on the origin country of the product. So that consumer, a little bit of sticker shock because now they're going to have to pay that additional fee at the time of delivery. Now, if the retailer chose to ship to their consumers as DDP, which is delivery duty paid, that would mean that the consumer would, see something at checkout. So they would see those additional fees, whether that would show up as import fees or charges, or they may just see shipping and handling, and it may be lumped into there. But someone obviously has to pay for those tariffs, and usually
Right.
in a DDP situation, it's going to be on the consumer. And like I said, they should see that in their on the checkout screen when they're ordering through that merchant.
Is that, since this is relatively new for a lot of retailers here in the United States, I think outside of the United States, tariffs are something that most consumers are familiar with. But here in the US, we've never really had to deal with that as a consumer. Uh,
Yeah.
for things like fashion items, low cost fashion items, how will that affect those customers versus the higher value fashion items? So, there may, and I'm just using fashion items as an example, but people sell low value goods and high value goods. Are we to expect, if I bought something for $20 from a merchant who manufactures and ship direct from overseas, should I expect to be charged for that? Because based on the, the way that, if it moves through the mail or versus a courier, how would that work exactly?
Yeah, so with the again, it's really dependent on the merchant or the retailer selling the goods that you're purchasing from, but definitely there's going to be those additional fees, and you should see something at checkout if it's going to be lumped into what you're paying, which would be a DDP scenario. In a postal environment though now, there really isn't any delivery duty unpaid, because the responsibility of collecting the tariffs is on the seller. So they have to, again, they're going to most likely collect it from the consumer, but through a postal environment, it has to be paid um, at, well, most post offices now that have, put a system in place to manage this, you're going to pay at the counter, or you're going to pay in a scenario where it's a retailer with, large volume, whatever service provider, they're going to be paying that directly before it enters the country. So when you have shipments going to the United States that are under that 800, there is no longer a
Mhm.
DDU option through the postal world. So
Right.
courier, again, there is, because courier can collect at time of delivery. Uh, but,
Hmm.
again, it's going to be much more costly through a courier environment. So if you want to stay at the lower price point on postage or shipping costs, postal is obviously the cheaper way to
Sure.
go. But
Hmm.
again, you're still paying that. And I can't see that retailers, some of them right now, I mean, it's sort of, maybe it's a wait and see game, because,
Hmm.
we've seen things change, day to day.
It's been a
um,
bit chaotic. Well,
yeah.
the
So
last few
if,
months. Sure.
there that chance that it could change, absolutely, but
Right.
they can only absorb those costs for so long. So
Sure.
eventually I can definitely, I would think that those merchants are going to have to pass that on to their consumers, or lump it into the cost of their product, where it's not as black and white. It's
Hmm.
now, that dress that was $20, maybe now it's $25. um,
Exactly.
but you know someone's going to have to pay it, and at the end of the day it's going to be the consumer.
So determining the type of delivery that you're choosing can also dictate how you're displaying that information at the checkout. So if, let's say, you're using a courier type of service, you might offer a DDP or a DDU. You would have a little bit more flexibility, perhaps, on how you want to collect the tariff.
Yeah,
But with a postal environment, you absolutely would only be able to use a DDP option through the whatever not partnership that the postal service
yeah.
has. Got it.
Yeah, because I mean, anything coming into the US is going to be delivered through the United States Postal Service, and they do not have a system in place to
Right.
collect on those under 800. They do have a system in place where they can collect on the 800 to $2,500 orders, but that's been in place, forever.
Hmm.
So that went unchanged, because it was only the 800 and under that were really impacted here. But they do not have a system in place, and their existing system could never support the volume of packages that they would see that required collection.
Right. And we started seeing some of the postal unions outside of the foreign post offices start eliminating their delivery into the US until they had a solution for this.
Yeah,
So
that,
we're starting to see them come back now, making arrangements with companies here in the US to assist them with that.
yeah,
But that's definitely a challenge in a postal delivery. You would really be forced into a DDP model, whereas a courier option or maybe a consolidator option will give you a little more flexibility using more
Yeah.
private carriers.
Yeah,
Uh,
there were I think it was around 88 foreign post offices that basically said we're not shipping to the US any longer. And
right.
some of them turned the lane off as early as, the 20, I think it was the 23rd of August
Well,
was one of the first.
yeah.
And some of them, didn't have them turned back on right away. There were some that obviously acted quickly. Royal
Hmm.
Mail, Canada Post, they now
Right.
have solutions through a third party to do
Hmm.
that collection. So they were able to partner with, a third party that also, jumped on this, saw this as an opportunity to basically provide a service to these post offices. So, yes, as you said, parcels are coming, are starting to come back in. But I can tell you that according to USPS, week over week, from the first week this was implemented to the week previous to the 29th, parcel volumes into the postal stream internationally were down 81%.
Ooh, wow.
So it
Wow.
was a significant volume hit for the USPS.
How do you think this is going to impact consumers' buying habits here in the US? Do you think people will just avoid buying in at all from international companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the consumers definitely. I mean, there's sticker shock already happening. I think there
Right.
was something on NBC regarding courier deliveries and consumers being, all of a sudden hit with
Hmm.
additional fees at time of delivery. So definitely consumers are already feeling this.
Hmm.
And I think, they're going to think twice before they hit that checkout, especially if they see these higher price points for shipping and handling, or that extra line that shows now import fees.
Right.
So, and maybe they have alternatives that they might want to shop local now.
Hmm.
That's a possibility. Um, and unless you're with a retailer or merchant that sort of got a jump on this and brought enough product into the US before this hit, and they were able to stock up, maybe you're still enjoying that lower price point. But eventually, if this sticks, these tariffs stay as is, we don't see the de minimis ever coming back, because the government had a plan to phase it out by 2020, July of 2027 anyways.
Hmm.
It just happened a little quicker. But the tariffs themselves, hopefully, they come down at some point in time, so it's not
Right.
as drastic of a hit to the consumer.
I'd like to segue into, transparency of these charges and how they're going to be broken down for the consumer. I know we had discussed a little bit about, at the checkout and so on and so forth. But do you expect that customers will get an invoice after delivery or before delivery? Will they be required if let's say they used a courier service, for
Yeah.
example, and it's DDU? Because and there's been some chatter, about people getting invoices after the product delivered here in the US, which
Hmm.
is something very different than what we usually see
Yeah.
internationally. So, should customers expect to get an invoice on the front end before it's delivered, or will they be billed after the fact?
Yeah. So I mean, each courier, operates a little bit differently, but there is definitely chance that a consumer could see something after the fact. I mean, I myself have seen this happen with UPS before.
Hmm.
For myself, there was duties owed on something that came to me. It was delivered, but I didn't pay. I wasn't
Hmm.
aware that anything was owing, but I had to pay
Right.
those additional fees, and it did come as an invoice. So, yes, there are certain instances where you could be invoiced after the fact, but I think most of the couriers now have, they get the phone number, the email, they do SMS
Hmm.
like messaging, and the consumer sort of gets a heads up. And then there's usually some sort of link where they can pay, so that the package can be delivered without any delays. and they pay that while that package is in transit. But
Could
again,
that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say again, US consumers, they've had that luxury of that $800 for so
Hmm.
long. So I just think it's really going to, it's going to have consumers saying, wait, what is this? I've ordered from them before. I've never had to pay this. And I mean, I'm sure people
Right.
follow the news, but if you don't live and breathe what we live and breathe, not everyone really understands the full impact of
Yeah,
this to the
absolutely.
consumer.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, with regarding to invoicing after the delivery, could that be determined based on if you have an account with, let's say, UPS or FedEx or whoever the courier is, then you are more likely to get a bill versus pay at the front end, in
Yeah, like I
advance of
said, most of
delivery.
them, if it's a consumer, you don't have any type of account with that, with,
Right. They're going
FedEx
to
or UPS.
call, email, whatever, and
Right, you're
collect.
gonna get a message, have to pay something, and
Yeah.
you'll be able to pay that prior to. But yeah, in an instance where you have an account with that carrier,
Hmm.
you could possibly see that being charged to you on an invoice.
Right. And how are these charges going to be calculated? Are they based on the country of origin, the product category? What is what is the Customs Border Patrol going to be looking at when they make that determination of those charges?
So yeah, the any duties or tariffs imposed on goods, it's based on where the product is manufactured. So when we say country of origin, it's not the origin country that that shipment was shipped from.
Right.
It's the country in which that product was manufactured. So if you think about, an order where you have four items, we'll say, clothing, those four items, they will be reviewed as what is the country of origin of each of those items within this package. And then each of those, if they are different countries, each could have a different percentage. So
Right.
when you submit, the data goes into Customs Border Protection. When they see that data, they are looking at those country of origins to see that the proper tariff has been applied to that item based on where that product was manufactured.
Hmm. Uh, Going back to the country of origin, I think that this is something that I've had conversations with my customers about is how is the country of origin determined on things where there might be multiple components of that product from different countries and that are assembled somewhere else. So for example, I'm going to use t-shirts because this has come up a few times with that, where the t-shirt is made in Guatemala, but it's screen printed in the United States. Technically the country of origin is Guatemala because what made it a t-shirt is Guatemala.
That's correct.
You putting your design on that product does not make it that
Yeah.
now the country of origin. So just
Yeah.
wanted
So
to have that
yeah,
clarity
and
there too.
that's a good point, Barb, because that is, and a lot of merchants think that just because they purchased the t-shirts in another country, brought them in, and then they did, put their logo or screen
Hmm.
something on that item, it's now, U.S. origin, which is not the case. If you look at the tag of the t-shirt, it's going to say, what country it was manufactured in, and that is the country of origin of that item.
Right. And, what kind of sticker shock are we looking at as a consumer? If I were to buy a $100 dress from a company and they ship it directly from China, what should I expect to see as far as those import charges? Just
Well, again,
ballpark.
I mean, depending on the items, right? But I mean, if you buy something at $100, regardless, any country, you're looking at least $10, upwards of $30 additional, and that's just the tariff. That's not including any type of fee that the postal operator or the courier imposes to handle the payment into CBP, right?
Mhm.
So there's that additional cost on top of these tariffs because this is now something additional labor wise that these companies have to do in order to satisfy CBP.
Right, right. Now we've talked about, who's responsible for paying them and how that collection is going to be happening. So either USPS, it's going to be DDP if it's moving through the postal network. That's the only option.
Yes.
And with courier, you have DDU and DDP. What do you think is going to happen to supply chain disruption? Do we expect that things are going to be delayed? Or what happens to the items that are already in transit right now?
Well, I think for the first week that this went into place, so the tariffs were being imposed the day that the shipments arrived in country. So basically, if they were flown in, whatever day they arrived for clearance, that was the day that determined whether or not the tariffs were going to be applicable. So I think for that first, week when this came into play, you did have some shipments that were already in transit that most likely got hit that the merchant never expected. Although in the postal environment, again, I mentioned that there were at least 88 foreign post offices that said we're not shipping to the US. And some of those did that very early on. So
Mhm.
prior to the 29th. So that, and just
So
for
they
that
wouldn't have
reason.
those packages
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
transit when they hit,
Yeah.
custom, right?
Exactly. So,
Because they weren't
those were
going to
the
pay
ones.
it.
No,
The foreign post
exactly. Yeah.
office isn't paying that tariff, so.
Yeah. And there was a lot of uncertainty, bringing that up, Barb. It's when the language that was written on who was going to be responsible for the payment, it was stated that it was going to be the responsibility of the shipper. And so airlines, they became afraid, they didn't want to be stuck with the bill to pay CBP. The post offices didn't have a solution. Obviously, the foreign post offices, USPS wasn't in any position to collect on now, all of these shipments. So, and they were, I think the number was for last year, 1.4 billion parcels in through the postal stream.
Wow.
So even breaking that down to daily, right? There was just no way that the USPS could handle that. So
Mhm.
um, the responsibility, I mean, the language has been clarified now by CBP, and the responsibility is on whichever party has taken on the responsibility. So when I mention those third parties have basically taken over that responsibility, relieving the airline of any responsibility, and also the foreign post offices. So,
Mhm.
and those post offices, most that are have turned on the US lane again, they have that solution in place where they've partnered with someone that's allowing them to collect and have this third party pay it in. So there's a streamlined process now that's going to allow these postal operators to have that solution. The UPU did also uh, mention, I think it was on the 6th of September, that this is available to all post offices now, so that there is a solution out there, because obviously the Universal Postal Union, I should clarify what that is, but it's basically an organization that helps post offices and sort of make everything level for all of these various countries. And uh, they sort of, oversee and manage these types of things, and they can enforce, certain regulations, which we'll get into one of those regulations in a little bit, because that too, regulation came into effect on September 1st. But on the 6th, they did announce that there was a solution out there. So, even some of these smaller foreign post offices now do or have the ability to implement that solution. So, but again, you implement the solution, it doesn't eliminate these extra charges again that the retailer is going to either have to pay or the consumer is going to have to pay.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground so far, and I just want to mention for those of you watching that there is a Q&A button below. If you have questions that we have not answered, please put them in there. We're going to spend the last 15 minutes of this call to go over those questions and anything that we're not able to get to in the time allowed, we will provide an email address for you to send your questions. So just want to mention that. Regarding these entities that are going to be working with these postal unions, how exactly is that going to work when, if a retailer sends something through, in from China, sends something in through their post office, how would they be collecting that at the checkout then, or would they have to collect it at the checkout, or does that now give that entity and that in between intermediary the ability to do that collection on their behalf?
Yeah, so depending on how the retailer or the merchant is set up, but in a postal environment, what's happening is even I, as a consumer, I could go into Canada Post if I'm shipping, my daughter something who she lives in Milwaukee.
Hmm.
If I'm shipping her something that I've purchased, I guess in that case it would be a gift. But if it's over, that $100 threshold for gift, I would have to, at the counter, Canada Post counter, they would do a lookup of my HS code, and they would then be calculating through this tool that's available. They would be calculating the
Okay.
tariffs that would be applicable to that package, depending on what that item is in there.
Hmm.
So it's all done at the counter. If
Got it.
you're a retailer going direct to a post office with larger volumes, and it's going through the postal stream, they too have a way now to collect that through these third parties. But it is
Okay.
the third party that the money is paid into, and then that third party pays that into CBP.
Okay. So it's not a, I just wanted to make sure that people understood that with these entities, it's not actually a DDU. It's still DDP
Yes.
because the entity or the person shipping it in the foreign country into the United States, they will have to pay those fees.
Yeah.
They're going to have to pay them upfront, and then that way the
Yeah.
consumer here in the U.S. would not,
Yeah.
unless you select a courier or private
Some
carrier
type of,
delivery
yeah.
that may have its
Yeah.
own rules and regulations as far as how those specific carriers would be collecting payment. But in terms of the postal, it will all be DDP through
Yeah.
the whatever intermediary they've decided on using.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Uh, how do you think merchants are adjusting to this? We've talked a little bit about it, but do you think people are more likely to change their prices or just refuse to ship to the US? Or I can't imagine people are going to be absorbing these costs, at least not in the
No.
long term. So, how do you think merchants in are going to adjust to this? Do you think it's better to give transparency, having it as a separate line item of import charges, or baking it into shipping and handling or cost of goods, which,
Yeah.
you know,
I think you're gonna see both. I think, for your higher end retailers, merchants, I think they're gonna be very transparent. You're gonna see it, it's gonna be clear on their sites. But maybe some of the smaller or cheaper priced item, merchants that are selling goods to the US, there you may see it may be hidden, right? So you might see it as shipping and handling, or again, they might just increase their price point.
right.
But I think you're going to see a sort of a mix with how these merchants are handling the additional costs.
Yeah, I mean, they could even go dynamic pricing based on IP address, have a completely
Yeah,
different set of pricing based on the IP address hitting their website. So
yeah,
there's a lot of ways that they could implement this. And I think transparency for the consumer is really important so people understand what they're paying for.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And you mentioned too, we have heard that some merchants just said, you know what, we're not going to ship to the US.
right.
Even I can just speak to even little shops, in my area where I live. Um, she has on, one of the boutiques I go into, she now has on her website no longer shipping to the US, and there's a little
Yeah.
we're, we're
Aw.
Canadian, sorry, but due to, the uncertainty and the
Well, it's
additional
very difficult for a
charges.
small business to
Yeah,
navigate these
yeah,
changes. This is a huge thing for any business to have to tackle, but a small business with a
yeah,
small team, they don't have the bandwidth to devote to making big systemic changes like this.
exactly. And
Do you think? Oh,
that's why I
sorry.
say it's been such a mix, such a
Yeah.
mix. Yeah.
Do you think sellers are going to start moving their inventory into the US because of this? Or
Well,
is
I
there
mean,
still a benefit?
well, there is. I mean, if you can move it in as unsold goods, then you're entering it in at a lower price point because the goods have not been sold. So it's basically the cost that you need to declare would be the cost of manufacture of those goods. So there still is that advantage. As I mentioned earlier, though, some of these merchants did bring in, especially, we're going into our peak season, right? So our
Mm,
heavy volume season, which
right.
typically we start seeing an uptick in the end of September,
Mhm.
right through into the new year. So some of these merchants said, you know what, let's just get as much as we can into the US so that, we don't have to stick our consumers with these additional costs. So that's already happened in some instances, and others are definitely looking at moving, the fulfillment of their products into the US. And that could be in bond as well. So when it's in bond,
Mhm.
they don't have to pay right away, right? They don't have to pay into CBP until the goods are actually fulfilled and sold. So there
Right.
are a few ways that, these companies can sort of uh, keep the costs, at a minimum. But again, there's no avoiding extra costs at this point. They are, uh, you know,
Right.
it's
It's
it's whether
inevitable.
they're exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just how much do you want to pay?
Right. I think I'd like to transition now into HS codes because that is another major change happening in our industry. And first, let's just explain what an HS code is. Can you give a brief explanation of what an HS code is and why it's now mandatory?
Yeah, so an HS code is basically a harmonized, it's a standard numeric classification code that is used universally. It's 6 digits, so the first six is universal, regardless of country of origin. The first 6 digits basically tells you what the commodity is. So what category it falls into. So is it clothing? Is it footwear? Is it, kitchen utensils? So
Hmm.
uh, that is basically the first six is the same for any country. And what has happened is, and let me just say that an HS code to customs is what is the product. They can look at an HS code in their system and know specifically what that product is.
Hmm.
And then each country has their own additional numeric codes that they may add to that first six to break it down even further.
Hmm.
If it's a women's dress made of cotton, so it gets very the longer the length of the numbers gets, the more it defines the product itself. So each country can add, some have, there's a standard six, but we do, well, we actually at EPOS will look up to 10 digits. So
Hmm.
if a country supports a 10 digit, we would look up that full 10 digit. But that
So
code, I was just going
sorry,
to
I
say
just
that,
want to interject real quick.
yes,
Just so for those, the first six is kind of a broad description of what the item is. Then, if you add two more digits, making it an 8 digit, that gives it a more descriptive, um,
correct.
tells more descriptive of what
Yeah,
that item is. And then to a 10 digit, that actually is more country specific, correct?
and gets in, that's correct. And it gets into the fabric content if it's
Hmm.
clothing, or,
Right.
the shoe, makeup of the shoe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets very specific to that exact product,
Right. And
not a
as HS
generalization.
Yes, yes. And as HS codes have started to become implemented outside of the United States, just some, we've seen this in the EU and in Ireland, for example, they were requiring the full 10 digit. So
Yeah,
there's some countries that do have different requirements than others as far as what that HS code, like the numbers, what they want to see
yeah.
in that. Does How do we handle the HS code classification? How is ePost and USPS? So with USPS, if I were to go drop off a package and I don't know an HS code because you know, why would I know that off the
Yeah,
top of my head, right? So if I
yeah.
take a package that I'm shipping to you in Canada, will the USPS be able to look up that code in order for me to ship that product?
Yeah, so let me just say, prior to September 1st of this year, USPS did not have a requirement for an HS code, but it was because of the Universal Postal Union. They said all postal operators should be including at a minimum the 6-digit HS code of a product in order for customs to determine what that product is and assess it for whatever import fees. So what the USPS has done is they, of course, made it now mandatory to include that. They will not stop shipments, though. So let me just say that as a large volume shipper, so when we take our freight, if we were not giving HS codes, the USPS as is right now, now this might change, but as of right now, they will allow the parcel to go through. The risk,
Mm,
however, with that is when it gets to its destination country, that foreign customs authority may say, this is not in compliance, therefore it could be delayed or it could even be returned, which it
mm,
would go back, directly to the shipper. But in an post office, so if you as a the public walks into a post office, USPS has put in place they've partnered with a third party. They do the lookup, and they will find the HS code, and the package will go out with that HS code on it. And that is, the full 10 digit. It's not just the 6 digit. So they have that tool in place. They
okay.
also have it in place with their own proprietary software. They have a system. Uh, I'll use the acronym. It's called GSS. In
Hmm.
that system, that you can as well do a lookup. So, but the if you're selling, abroad, and your shipments are going through the postal stream, it is extremely important that, if you have, uh, you know, significant volume, so you're a large shipper, that you partner with somebody, I mean, someone like an ePost, because we already and have even before September 1st. I mean, we know international shipping. I mean, that's what we live and breathe. So of course, we're putting HS codes on everything. And so we have our own, our lookup tool that we use. And the key is we, receive data from our customers and we ensure that the descriptions that our customers provide
Hmm.
to us are accurate enough for our system to then, make the call to say, hey, here's the description. What is the HS code? I have a package going to,
Right.
the Netherlands. So descriptions are very important. We work with our customers in our sales team to ensure that customers understand the importance of having a very clear and concise description so that our system can do the work for them so they don't have to, provide us HS codes. I mean, we love it if they do. If they have
Hmm.
stored it in their own database and they can provide those HS codes, that's great. But
Right.
if not, we have a solution there. And I mean, it's just important for merchants, retailers to partner with someone who they know is, doing that work so that you don't end up with your package in that destination country now sitting or, being
Right.
refused entry because it didn't have all of the components that were required for import.
Let's say a customer has the 6 digits, but they don't have an 8 or a 10. Uh, would is that something? Let's say as ePost or the USPS, if they would that be something that would be caught and fixed in order to move to a specific country that might require the 8 or the 10 HS code, or is that
Yeah.
something that the customer should be updating their system with to get it to a more specific HS code of 8 to 10 digits?
Yeah, that's a good question. But in our scenario, if a customer provides us with the six, so we've set certain rules in our system. So it's really dependent upon the destination country.
Mhm.
But let's use the EU for example. You brought that up earlier. So in the EU, you need to provide a 10-digit HS code. So our system is savvy enough to say, okay, hey, we see the data here, it's 6 digits, but this
Mhm.
is going to the EU, I need 10. So then the system will look up based on the HS code provided and the description, it will then pull the additional digits to make that a 10-digit HS code. So
Right.
in our scenario, again, it's we base it on what the requirements are for each specific country. But if a country doesn't require more than six, we'll process the parcel. It'll go in, and there won't be any issues. But we
Mhm.
follow that closely. We make sure that as customs changes their requirements, we update our system so that we're. I mean, I'll just mention quickly um, how easily we can adapt. When Canada introduced the 25% surtax, for example,
Mhm.
that was added in our system. We were ready day one. We were ready before that, right? We knew it was coming. We added it in, and our system was savvy enough to know when to calculate that. So that's the type of partner and systems customers need to be looking for because we basically we don't expect our customer to know all of the ins and outs of customs and all these country regulations. That's our job, and that's one of the services that we provide.
Right. Right. Of course. And for customers who do have HS codes and are pushing an HS code, what happens if the HS codes they have are incorrect? Is that something that's going to be caught at the foreign post office? Do things generally slide through as is? What should
I
we
mean,
be expecting if there is a problem with an HS code?
yeah, and it'll really depend on the destination country, but we would trust our customer if they pass us 10
Hmm.
digits. I mean, we would trust that that's the correct code for their product. But if it arrived in the foreign customs, um, they may just adjust it and based on what the product actually is and apply the whatever duties or tax may be applicable to that package based on whatever change they made. But I mean, if I think about just our services like into Canada, for example, where we work directly with a custom broker, EU, we work directly with a custom broker,
Hmm.
UK, and all of these other countries, what happens there is we control it, right? So it goes to our broker first before it goes to customs. So that's there's a better outcome with that than there
Right.
is if it's just in the hands of customs through, say, a postal
Hmm.
service. If it's a direct entry where, we as a logistics provider are taking it directly into the country, we then have much more control because we partner with our customs brokers and then they can make those adjustments before it actually gets submitted to customs. So
Right.
really depends on how you're shipping and who your service provider is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I've seen this firsthand where, a customer might have provided us maybe a very weak description of those goods. And so an HS code is appended, but it's not correct because of a weak description of the
Yeah,
product. And what ends up happening is, our broker will catch that and say, yeah, this isn't
yeah,
right. Here's the correct, and we can actually communicate, hey, we noticed you didn't have an HS code here. this is the correct HS code for that product. And I would change your description. So we're able
Yeah,
to communicate those things when those issues do come up. And I've
yeah.
seen that be communicated to customers in the past. Um, I'm going to wrap up here with some questions from the audience. Thank you so much. We got a couple of questions so far. Will small and mid-sized merchants be disproportionately, sorry, affected compared to larger brands that can pre-position their inventory in the US? How much overhaul to their systems do they need to accommodate the change?
Yeah, definitely, the small to medium size companies are going to suffer much more than those larger brands. Um, they don't have that flexibility necessarily to move their fulfillment centers
Mhm.
and make all of these adjustments to their process flows that the larger businesses do. So I think, and that's why we saw and heard the smaller companies saying, you know what, I I I just can't do this. I'm going to have to turn this lane off
Mhm.
and rethink how I'm going to manage this, right? So, and again, there's always that uncertainty. So, is this going to go away? There's hope there as well. But I think the larger brands definitely have a leg up on the small to medium sized companies.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, we'll see. I think what we're probably going to end up seeing is a lot more companies taking advantage of the bonded warehouse. So
Yeah,
I would bet my paycheck that there's going to be a lot of fulfillment companies, if they're not bonded yet, are going to
yeah,
become bonded
yeah,
warehouses
definitely.
so that they can take in that inventory, hold it until those sales orders come through. And then
Yeah,
all that customer would have to do in that case would pay the tax, the tariff, um,
yeah,
at the
on
time
the
of the sale.
yeah,
So I could definitely see that. That is an advantage I think that larger retailers would have over a smaller retailer. But
yeah,
we could see that as well with some of the smaller retailers. But I think it's going to be more challenging for them for sure. And
yeah.
just implementing the software changes that need to be made to accommodate some of this as well. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge. I think everybody is going to be challenged by it, but
Yeah.
sadly, I think the small businesses are going to be hit the hardest. We got another question here. What is the best way for businesses to communicate the end of de minimis to their customers, or should we at all? Is that something that a retailer should be communicating to customers, and how is that best communicated? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, we've seen that some, even marketplaces, they've made it, got the message out to their sellers. They've got the message out, sellers get their message out to consumers that, explains maybe not, at the level or detail that, we've discussed it today, but, definitely the message is out there that, there is no longer a de minimis or a threshold before we have to charge duties on the goods coming into the US. So but you know what should have happened is, I mean, we all knew this was coming. I know we as a company, we started advising our customers. We do our monthly newsletter. We were advising our customers well in advance that, hey, if this happens, this is what it means, and just sort of, you know, educating them on what this could mean for them. So I think it was really important for the merchants. If they haven't already done this, they definitely need to educate their consumers or their sellers in the case of a marketplace.
Yeah, actually, I would like to segue into marketplaces. This isn't a question that's in the box, but it's a question I
Okay.
actually have
Yeah.
is how is the marketplace going to be handling this? Because I know when we deal with marketplaces on our end, shipping internationally to other foreign countries, what generally happens is the marketplace is the importer of record, so to speak, or they're the shipper, I should say. The importer of record would be the consumer, but when you're shipping it into the United States and it's a marketplace, you don't necessarily know when I order something from Amazon if it's coming from China or New Jersey. I don't necessarily know that. So I would assume, or I would hope, that the marketplaces are taking ownership of that and including it into their shipping and handling. Or, but I have yet to see it as like a line item in a marketplace. But how do you think, or how have you heard
Yeah,
what they're going to be
um,
doing to
I
handle
don't think they're showing it as a line item, but they're definitely, I mean, because they already have those tools in place, right, as a marketplace. Because as you say, they take ownership of that.
it?
So there is in a DDP situation, which really is what it would be now for any goods going into the US, right, that are under $800. They're going to take that responsibility. Um, but it's a good question, Barb. I mean, I would like to actually go to a marketplace checkout and see what's there, right? Because I haven't really seen. I mean, I've looked at some um, retailers and what they've done to their sites, and they're showing little blurbs of
Right.
what the additional tariffs are going to have to be paid, but it's a separate line item. But I'm not sure in the case of a marketplace. But yeah, that would be, I think, something I'd want to take a look at as well. That's a good
Well,
question.
I'm doing my part by ordering from Amazon on behalf of everyone. So I will take one for the team, and I'll place my order and see where if I got any light items there in my checkout. So
Yeah, sounds
um,
good.
yeah, I think that I would like to just we're running low on time here, so I would just like to touch on what are really the top three things for de minimis that a retailer should know in order to have this managed successfully. What should they really focus on to make sure that they are uh, giving their customers the best service possible?
Well, I think number one, be transparent. Make sure your consumers are aware. Don't let them be sticker shocked, when their package arrives. I think being transparent and showing it as an additional cost, but also don't just, you know, when I say transparent, yeah, make it black and white on your checkout, but also educate them, let them know why this has happened. Because again, I think I mentioned early on, consumers in the US have had that luxury of that $800 for so long.
Hmm.
Um, it's just going to be, it's not something that a consumer is going to understand. Watching the news or, reading an article, hearing that de minimis has gone away. They really need to understand. And I think that even for like, I mean, I hear from merchants, in Canada saying we're going to shut this off, but do you understand what's happening? Have you educated your customer? Have you sent them, looked into what the details are, and
Hmm.
given your consumer some type of explanation as to why? Because maybe they love your product and they still want your product, but turning off that lane isn't necessarily the solution. So I think businesses just have to really look at what's right for them. um, Partner with someone that can really help you understand what your options are. And again, just be transparent.
Absolutely. Well, I think we got to. Oh, it looks like we have. Says I heard Amazon requirements for e-commerce shippers will change come December. Do you have any additional info for them? Do you know anything about?
No, I don't know all the details to that, but it's something we'll look into, and I'm sure we'll be sharing
Right.
more information.
And I think we're all still working through these changes and
Been a
anything
lot.
new that comes out, and we will continue to communicate those things. So
Yeah.
well, I just want to thank everybody for joining today. If you have questions after this webinar, please send them to inquiries@epostglobalshipping.com, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Make sure you follow ePost and connect with us on LinkedIn for more industry updates, shipping tips and tricks. That's what we're here for. you're experts in this space. And I just want to thank everyone for joining. I know we all have very busy schedules and we might have run a little long today, but I appreciate everybody's time. And find us out on LinkedIn, follow You Post Global. We're providing more and more content like this for you folks. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Barbara, and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Allison.
Bye.
Bye bye.